Welcome to this special edition of the latest on the fourth period. I'm your host, Kate Pedersen, joined by Dave Pagnotta. And Dave, let's take a spin around the NHL and start with Montreal.
Yeah.
What they were able to do this season to make the playoffs coming out of Four Nations with such a slim chance. Didn't want to exit in the first round, but hey, it was a great showing for a young team. And then we heard from Kent Hughes today addressing where he wants to make some moves. He wants to be stronger and tougher, and he's looking particularly at adding depth at 2C. What can you tell us you've heard there?
Yeah, Hughes joined by Jeff Gordon as they addressed the media earlier today on Monday. They acknowledge that they want to be a little bit more physical. They want to be a little beefier in this lineup. And the 2C position is a priority for this club in the offseason. Now, we know there are a lot of usual suspects that are out there right now, and we're going to hear some bigger names as the offseason progresses, as we get closer to the draft. But what the Canadiens have done in the last little while, the last 3 years, was strategically utilize their draft capital and their cap space in order to pounce on certain circumstances. That's how they got Patrick Laine, that's how they got Alex Newhook, and that's how they got Kirby Dach. Now, Dach was supposed to be the 2C guy. That hasn't worked out. He's dealing with injury. They're going to go out and try to find somebody in that early to mid-20s range that can fit with the rest of this core. They've got a lot of cap space to play with over the course of this summer. Money's not going to be an issue for them, and they're willing to move some of their draft capital and some of their prospects in order to get some immediate help. So something to look at for the Canadiens, following a similar pattern that they've had, but because of this successful season, because of Ivan Demidov joining the club late, because of the breakout year from the rookie Lane Hudson, likely the rookie of the year, there's a lot of positivity surrounding this club. The oldest guy of the core is the captain, Nick Suzuki. He's still only 25. So if they can insulate that even further, it's going to be something that the Habs are going to want to do.
Well, the LA Kings, disappointment. You can't write it any differently. They're disappointed. The players expressed that in their locker clean-out. But moving forward, they've parted ways with Rob Blake, and now they've got to go back to the drawing board and see, 4 years of disappointment. Mm-hmm. Where do they go from here?
Well, as you mentioned, they made major strides this season. Definitely a disappointing ending. They were the better team against the Edmonton Oilers, but the Edmonton Oilers, maybe they were the smarter team because they took advantage of miscues by LA in order to get ahead and move on to the second round. Yes, Rob Blake is out. They are starting their search for a new GM immediately. They're going to look around to see who that person is going to be, and that person will determine the fate ultimately of the head coach in Jim Hiller, but at the same time also look to make some additions to this roster. They've got a lot of cap space to play with. They've got about $25 million in space that they're going to potentially try to use to see if they can help add to this roster. So with everything that's going on, all the pieces that they've got in LA with the core, with guys like Kempe and Fiala that were able to add to the offense of that group, they're going to look to add to that. So they're going to spend some money. They're going to be aggressive, but this will ultimately be up to the new guy in charge. We'll have to wait and see who that is.
All right, well, Mike Sullivan in with the New York Rangers as the head coach. But now, Chris Drury, don't envy this job. Yeah. He's got to make something happen here with less than $10 million in cap space. What can he do? Yeah,
different scenario, different situation than out west in LA. Like 9.6, something like that in cap space, and they've got to get Keandre Miller signed. They've got to get Will Cooley signed, and then they've got about $3 million to play with. So it's going to be another, by the looks of things, aggressive offseason, Kate, for the New York Rangers. The owner wants it to be. Jim Dolan wants that to happen. So we'll see kind of, exactly what kind of tricks Drury has up his sleeve. Don't be surprised to hear Chris Kreider's name out there again. Don't be surprised to hear Mika Zibanejad's name out there, even with a full no movement clause. And in the last few days, I'm starting to hear some interesting whispers surrounding Artemi Panarin. Now, I don't know if he's fully available, but he's got 1 year left on his contract, and they've got to decide if they're going to continue with the group that they've got, or if they can move Panarin, get a heck of a return, and then utilize cap space plus some of that capital to rejig this roster. I don't know if that's the path they're going to take, and this may be totally premature for me to even bring up, but we're going to hear some interesting storylines with the New York Rangers in how they retool for next season.
Yeah, it's going to take some creativity, no doubt. All right, let's take a toodle over to the island, where the exciting news from pregame before puck drop here in Toronto, they won the draft lottery. Congratulations, New York Islanders. But let's talk about their search for a GM and a president. What's going on there on the island?
Yeah, that's a direct search right now. They're fully engaged in conversations with candidates for both the president of hockey ops position and the general manager's position. What I can tell you, you can add a guy to the list, Matthew Darsh, who is an assistant GM with the Tampa Bay Lightning. He is going to be one of the individuals that's going to interview for the GM role. They seem to be moving closer towards making a decision on a president of hockey ops. I don't know if I don't know if I would categorize it necessarily as imminent, but they are making strides in that department. Now, one individual that's on their radar and has been, at least internally, is Jeff Gorton. We mentioned him earlier with the Montreal Canadiens, the president of hockey ops there. I believe they've sought out permission from the Canadiens to speak with him. I do not know if they've been granted that permission yet, but that's somebody at least internally on their radar, and those are the caliber of individuals that they'd like to bring in to reshape this organization moving forward. Now, having the first overall pick is interesting. Schaefer's the top guy. He was somebody that the San Jose Sharks are certainly high on. I wonder about Hagen being the local kid with the Islanders. That's going to be an interesting twist, but that'll be up to the GM once he comes in. But the search fully on Long Island. We'll see what the Islanders end up doing, but add Matthew Darsh to the list in terms of the GM candidates, and we'll see if the Canadiens grant them permission to speak with Jeff Gorton for their president role.
Well, never a dull moment in the National Hockey League, whether you're in the playoffs or not, but we roll on with our coverage of the second round as well here on the fourth period. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of The Latest. I'm Kate Pedersen and Dave Pagnotta signing off tonight from Toronto.